Morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon for him.
Yeah, Shmuel, good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
If I
What?
don't see you later, have a good evening.
Yeah,
The Truman story.
that's right. Okay, so we had just started this She'ila yesterday, which is on what basis did our rabbis prohibit a person from being a witness if he's a Masachek Bekuvia, if he's a professional gambler? Okay, so there's a dispute among the Amoraim as to why a gambler is pasul le'edus. Rami Bar Chama Omer Kevin Shosim Tanoi B'neihem Shekol Mishi Yinatzeach Es Chavero Ba'oso Mischak Yikabel Sikum Shel Kesef Kach V'Kach. So one opinion is Rami Bar Chama. He says that there's an agreement among the gamblers around the table, the poker table, let's say, that whoever wins is going to get a certain amount. Zu asmachta, ve'asmachta nikra is shekol adam shemekabel alatzmo tzad hasafik atoli b'tnai. He said, b'tnai yadua, mibeli gemiras das lahaknos l'shein. He says, each person is committing himself in a very flimsy way to relinquish his money. It's called an asmachta. He says, yeah, I agree. But at the same time, in his heart, he's anticipating to leave the table as a winner. He says, and therefore, because each person is expecting to win. And he certainly isn't in a complete control as to whether he's going to win or not. And therefore, it turns out that even though he said yes, I will give up my money to the pot, but it's not a full-fledged commitment because it's based on a faulty expectation, and therefore it turns out that whoever wins the pot is, in a sense, stealing. Okay. So that's Rami Bar Chama's reason.
I guess Rami Bar Chama didn't know about playing slots where you're playing against the house, so you're not playing against other people. So you're not stealing from anybody else. If you gamble, you can gamble on your own.
Well, it's an interesting question. What about the casino owner? Is a casino owner pasul le'edus because he's taking people's money? According to Rami Bar Chama, the casino owner should also be pasul le'edus. Yes. Steve Wynn and Sheldon Adelson and all those nice Jewish boys.
People take money from them, I think.
Yeah, but people take their tzedakah all the time.
Right, lotteries. Very same lottery.
That's the state, even the state.
Right. So
it's not the same thing.
But you are playing against somebody else. You're playing against the casino in the state.
If the guy's not Jewish,
They don't even want to give their money.
if the guy's not Jewish, the owner's not Jewish.
So, it could be that things like slots and lotteries, you're right, a person who plays those is not pasul le'edus, because the chances of winning are very slim, and you're not playing directly against another person across the table, according to this svara. Yeah. So literally, Masachek Bekuvia is a person who plays dice, which is totally a game of chance. At least in poker, it's a game of skill, partially at least. Okay, V'Rav Sheshis Omer shehamasachek bekuvia ein zu asmachta v'hapsul shel masachek bekuvia mipnei she'eino osek b'yishuvo shel olam. Rav Sheshis disagrees with Rami Bar Chama. He says a different svara. The reason, he says, it's not a problem of asmachta. When you sit down at the table, you willingly give up your money, knowing that you have every chance of losing at least as much as you have a chance of winning. So what's the reason why you're pasul? Because if you do this professionally for the majority of your livelihood, you are not engaging in the occupation of this world. That's literally
not contributing to society.
You're not contributing to society in a meaningful way. you're not helping society. And that's the reason why you're Pasal Le'evis. V'nemru kama bi'urim l'masha amar Rav Sheshes. So there's a number of different explanations as to what Rav Sheshes really means. Rashi mevar, keven she'eno osek b'yeshuva shel olam, eno baki b'tiv hadinim umasu matan ve'eno yirechet. Rashi explains, he says, you're not part of the regular commercial trade of this world, and therefore you don't know halacha, you don't know how people exchange money on a regular basis, and therefore you're not fearful of sin. That's, I guess, the two go hand in hand. You don't really know about how people exchange money in a normative way, and therefore you're not like fearful of losing money in the way that normal people are, and you're not going to be fearful of sin either. You're more likely to become a thief. But that's how Rashi understands it. I guess, in other words, people who engage in commercial trade, right, know how, I guess, have a certain greater value to other people's money. And as a result, they're going to be more conservative in the way they behave with money. They won't try to take other people's money. They won't be cavalier in the way that they treat other people's money. And that's the reason why, says Rashi. Ve'ilu harambam mevayer, the Rambam explains it differently. He says, Keven she'eno osek b'yeshuva shel olam b'cheskaso she'ochel min hakuvia shehu avak gezo. He says, the argument is that since you're not engaging in regular, trade in the world, then we have to assume that you're living off of the gambling. And living off of the gambling is avak gezo. Now, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
You're living off of gambling. It sounds almost like Rami Bar Chama's explanation. So I'm not really sure how we understand the Rambam, but let's go on. Vahatur mivayer, keven she'enu yodeya kama toirach ha'adam achar hamamon, yiyeh kal be'enav lahoid edu sheker lahafsid mamon chaver. The Torah says that you don't have the proper regard for how hard it is to earn a buck, because your whole life is based on, just gambling, and you're not engaged in commercial trade. So it'll be easier or lighter in your eyes to testify falsely to cause people to lose their money. In other words, you don't really care about money in the same way that other people do. So
Easy come, easy go.
easy come, that's a good one. Easy come, easy go.
So a day trader, not day trader.
Oh.
How does that fit in there?
I don't think a stock day trader is the same as this, because he takes money very seriously. He's looking at the stocks, looking at patterns, using software to guide his patterns. They're saying that AI is really changing the day trader industry, because there's so many tools now that can, at least with some level of accuracy, predict how a stock is. Well, you don't buy it?
No, but again, they don't do nothing in society either, guys.
Is that really true?
So I see from my experience, it's actually manipulative, actually become negative.
In what way?
They pick on certain stocks and leave it. And unfortunately, I've dealt with that with currencies, where you pick on certain stock, whatever, and actually becomes negative to the value of the company there, and actually forces people. I see these guys, they actually force stocks down.
You're saying that day traders collude with each other in order to do this?
They have momentum trading where they can see stop losses, whatever. So somebody's got a stop loss, a stop loss.
I don't know what a stop loss is. I'm sorry.
Okay, stop loss is where you own Bell, BC at 40, and then you have a stop loss, you get at 35, then I'm going to sell automatically and take my losses. So these guys know where these levels are, the chart levels and institutional levels are, where they actually will push it down to trigger all these losses. And they start going farther, and actually start going back up again and bring it up. So people lost all their money, stop loss or to certain triggers, and then they'll bring it back up. So I disagree with stock trades are good for the market at all, for the economy.
See trading places around there?
That's not real. That's not real.
That's not
Was that Eddie Murphy?
They force the stocks.
Okay, many years ago, that was, okay, again, I'm my age a little bit. Many years that was happening, and I was specifically involved with stuff like that. Well, actually, just quickly, off the record, is that I used to run.
It's on the record.
I ran a big insurance company, big in English, so I was a trader on the desk, and the portfolio manager came to me, so, I need those shares up. Quarter end, it looks good on my statements for all my clients and whatever, but it needs to go up $1 to $2 because I'm not active. So please, you got a friend at Merrill Lynch, 5 minutes to 4 on Friday, long weekend, month end or quarter end, get the shares up for me. So I put a large order in, and I bought the shares like a half, because portfolios look much better. So that's wow, that's illegal.
No, that's not your money either. Is
It's
it?
not my money either, but nowadays they don't have that anymore, but actually it's monitored electronically by the regulators. But that's, in those days, there's a lot of information, a lot.
Mhm.
Scary stuff.
Well, I guess, so
It's just sophisticated.
yeah, well, but I think, but at the same time, you understand you're manipulating the currency market or the stock market, but it's not, you don't have that same argument that it's kal be'einav, that it's light in your eyes to testify falsely because you don't care about other people's money. I guess maybe if you're a day trader and you're trying to manipulate other people's money, maybe you could make that argument.
I guess it's not
I
left to
suppose.
chance. As a,
Well,
That's
no,
gambling.
it is, surely it's left up to chance, yeah.
is it?
Yeah.
Beyond my knowledge.
So, but the bottom line is, it says v'halacha k'Rav Sheshes. We paskin like Rav Sheshes, meaning, what does it mean we paskin like Rav Sheshes? They're both saying the same, the halacha is the same. The nafkamina is that v'davka bisman she'en lo umnus elahu, that according to Rami Bar Chama, you don't have to be a professional gambler. Even if you go to Las Vegas every other weekend and you play poker, but otherwise you're gainfully employed, according to Rami Bar Chama, you're pasalei. But according to Rav Sheshes, it's based on your attitude to money because you're not engaging in any other method of earning income. And so based on that, davka bisman she'en lo umnus elahu, it's only when you have no other trade, you have no other source of income other than the gambling. But if you have another source of income and you just do this recreationally, so then you are kosher leidus. And that it's on that basis, like I may have mentioned to you years ago when I used to go to Vegas for Comdex. Comdex was the electronics trade, computer
show.
An electronics show. This was in the 90s when Windows was just, if I would have bought Windows, Microsoft back then and Apple back then, I wouldn't be a rabbi today. Anyway, so I was online in one of the hotels to get in to listen to Steve Jobs, right? And, the line was so long that it was winding through the lobby. And the lobbies in all of the hotels in Vegas are filled with slots and other tables, So I'm standing online and there's this chussid sitting at the craps table. Not at the craps, it was the blackjack table. And so I just walked past, and as I'm walking past on the line, I say, Hatzlacha. And so he looked up and he smiled and he nodded.
It's not my day job.
Yeah.
Oh, I got way worse.
Okay. I have another story about Vegas and religious Jews, but it's so inappropriate, so I can't even say it. Okay. Taking something that belongs to your friend when you believe that he won't mind. So here's the shaila. Let me just see if there's anything in the footnotes. Let me just see if there's anything in the footnotes here. Okay, no, he just goes into a much lengthier discussion. Okay, she'ela, ha'im mutar lokachas eze davar, Michel Chavero, o Shcheno, Kagon Ochel o Eze Chayfetz, Kasher Borolo Sheyisratze Chavero Shcheno Kishiyivadalo Mea Inyan. Am I allowed to take something that belongs to my friend or my neighbor without his knowledge, based on my assessment that when he discovers that I've taken it, he will be pleased that I've helped myself to this item? Or do I have to say, no, I'm never allowed to take something without someone's knowledge out of the fear that it may in some way
He's obviously never given
bother
you
them.
some blankets.
He's never given me a blanket permission. So tshuva, and we've seen this in Rav Shraga's Sefer also. Yesh omrim shemuter lokachas eze dover hanitzrach lo mechavero o mishcheno kasher borlo kishiyavo yishma yisratze b'mashe yishtamesh b'dover hashayach lo im ze kelim o ma'acholim uchadoyma. So some say that it's perfectly fine to take something that you need from your friend or your neighbor when you know for sure that when he discovers that you took it, he'll be happy. V'yesh omrim, like, my friend left his garage door open, and I noticed that he has pruning shears, and I'm pruning my garden, and
So it's to borrow, it's not to take, it's to borrow.
yeah, to borrow. But it could also be to help myself to some of the apples that are growing on his tree. I mean, it could be either, right? V'yesh omrim she'en li yishtamesh mebli yedias haba'olim. And some say that you're not allowed to take it without his knowledge. And therefore, if a person is lenient in a time of need, let's say of great need, you have someone to rely upon. When it is absolutely certain that his friend will be fully on board, after discovering that you use the things that belong to him, and he's not makpid. He says, but you can't be lenient if you at least there's a possibility that he's going to be makpid, that he's going to bless you, he's going to mind. And even if, let's say, he says afterwards, oh, I see you borrowed, or like, hey, I noticed that someone put back my shears. Would you happen to know? And they say, oh, yeah, I needed them. I just borrowed them for a few minutes. I hope that was okay with you. And he says, sure it was okay. Right? So sometimes people, after the fact, will say, sure, I didn't mind, because they're embarrassed to say about such a trifle that it bothered me. Okay, so he gives the background for this case. Amemaru Marzutra Viravashi Iklo Labustana Demori Bar Isak. I see Arise Tamori Virimone Vishoda Kamayu. So these three rabbis came to the orchard of a man named Mori Bar Isak. And so the sharecropper, the guy who was working the field, thought he was doing a nice thing. He brought out dates and pomegranates from the field and put it in front of them and said, here, Rabbi Isai, help yourselves. Amemar v'Ravashi achli marzutra lo achil. So Amemar and Rav Ashi ate from the fruit, but Marzutra did not. Upiresh Rashi lo achal degezel nino shabalam lo yadu. So Rashi explains because Marzutra was concerned that maybe it would be gezel, because the owner hadn't yet known. Maybe the sharecropper just did this of his own volition because, he was brought up with manners that when guests come, you give them food. But it wasn't his food to make that determination. So the owner then later on comes by And he says, "V'amar le larise amaylo isis lehu l'rabbanan mehana shapirta." And he turns to his sharecropper and says, "Why didn't you give them the better quality fruit? You should have given them the nicer ones." Amru le amemer v'ravashi l'Rav Zutra hashta amaylo achil mar. So Amemer and Ravashi turn to Mar Zutra and they say, "Now, do you see we were right? Why wouldn't you eat now?" V'hatanya nimsu yafos mehen truma so truma. So doesn't the Brisa say that if a person notes that his sharecropper tithed his produce without instruction, and he says, "Oh, I wish he would have used the better produce to tithe," then if there is better produce, the tithing is a valid tithe. In other words, you take his word seriously. He's not being sarcastic. He's not just trying to cover up. So Amar Lahu, so Mar Zutra said back to them, "Not so fast." Hachi Amar Rava lo Amru elo le'inyan truma bilvad mishum demitzvahu v'nichale. But Rava said that's only as far as the mitzvah of truma, because everyone wants to do the mitzvah of truma. But aval hacha mishum kisuftahu. But here he's only saying it because of embarrassment. Upirish Rashi nimsu yafos alma golidaite denichale hachana nami golidaite b'mashana. So basically, what Mar Zutra was saying is, it could be that he really doesn't want to give up his produce. Maybe he's just eking out a living off of this produce, and he's not happy with the fact that you guys came and started and that a sharecropper gave you. But because he needs to be courteous and he doesn't want to make anyone feel bad, he said to his worker, "Oh, I wish you would have given them from the nicer produce."
Is the problem from the sharecropper? Is he the problem?
Well, the sharecropper may have done something inappropriate, but it's the end user that, Amemar and Ravashi were the ones who, according to Mar Zutra, may have been guilty of theft, because you don't really know if the owner was happy that you were eating that produce or not. So anyway, it goes on from there, but that's the basis of this halacha. And the poskim therefore discuss whether, you have to be really certain that the person really doesn't mind. It could be that maybe you have to have established some kind of pattern in the past. Okay. But you can't just assume. Let me just see if there's.
So what is the problem? If you're not over to say it, like, what are you being, like, what is?
There's a potential gazela.
It's
Yeah.
potential to say.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no punishment or fine for something like that.
Right, because the guy is moichel afterwards. He's moichel, but that still doesn't stop you from violating the Torah's commandment of "you shall not steal." In other words, if I steal and the person from whom I've stolen, the victim, forgives me for the theft, I still have to do tshuva, right? It's just that I don't have to pay him back. It's like what's the story of Les Miserables, right? Is that the story? Les Mis, the story of Jean Valjean, the guy was stealing from the very nice, was it the priest? Who was he stealing from? Was it a priest or something? Or yeah. Yeah. And the priest forgave him, but he still, his conscience consumed him for what he had done. Okay. All right, let us go on. That's about all I know about Victor Hugo. Jean Valjean. Okay. And then the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay. Tehima b'chanut baharama. Here's the she'ela. Mi shemarim kagon shaholech eitzel chenveni v'omer lo sheritzanu liknos peros. Okay. Using deceit in order to sample a merchant's wares. Okay, so a person is using some level of deception. So he goes to a shopkeeper and he says, "I'd like to purchase some produce from you." The toim ma'at mehem, and he starts tasting it. And then afterwards he says, "It's not so good. Thank you, but I'll pass." Right. So in the meantime, he's got a little snack there. Ve'achar kach holech gam etzel sheni u've'ashlishi yosekein. And then he's in Machane Yehuda, and he goes down to the next guy, tastes the next guy's stuff. It's not exactly for me. It does to the third guy the same. Ha'im ba'ofen hazen echshav gazlan. Is he a gazlan in this situation? O she'ein ze nechshav gazlan me'acher she'ein lokeach hadavar shetoim b'chazaka me'hamocher. Since he's not actually stealing, the merchant is allowing him to take. So since the merchant is allowing him to take, maybe he's not doing an act of gezel.
You did a survey before, we were talking about the women in Iraq who would dip their fingers in the yogurt but that was a known thing to be done.
Yes.
And they would go around, so it's the same sort of idea. isn't it?
Right. But there,
They're being honest, they want to taste it, they want to say.
so we made a distinction between women who dip their finger. It's just gross. Yeah, who dip their finger in the lebanon in order to sample it if they want to buy it or not.
You don't know where those fingers have been.
Versus people who do it in order to be able to just have breakfast for free. Okay, so the tshuva is, yeah, you're right. We did see this before. I don't know why he's bringing it a second time. He says, "Asur lasos harama begazela." You're not allowed to do this kind of deception in theft. Kagon shu osa atzmo v'omer sherotza liknos me'aperos, like representing yourself as wanting to purchase produce. V'toim ma'at mehem, and you taste a little bit. But you say, the price is too high. And you say to the merchant, well, I'll give you such and such. It's like it's $1 a pound, I'll give you 75 cents a pound. And you know that the merchant's not going to agree. So, and then on that basis, you say, well, I really wanted to buy it, but, it's just too high. You go to the second and third guy and basically have lunch on their dime. You're a gazlan. Plain and simple, you're a gazlan. There's only one time that our sages make an exception to this rule, if your life is in danger. Let's say you just let blood. And when you've after a bloodletting, our sages say that you're in a precarious health state. The person could fall into a swoon, could faint, and could get very sick, or worse. So the Gemara says that the only way to remedy that is to have a glass of wine. I don't know why. I'm not sure that is actually therapeutic or not. But let's say you just had a bloodletting, your pockets are empty, you have no money, and you don't have anything to buy the wine with, and you're walking through the shuk. And you're embarrassed to ask for a free glass of wine. In that case, in that case, you're allowed to take a slug, meaning a bad coin, or a promissory note that is no good. And then after you give it to him, this merchant will later discover that it's a bad coin. Then you would be allowed to go to a wine merchant or a food merchant, where the custom is for people to taste the merchandise before they eat. You can have a small taste only in that scenario, because your health is on the line. And then you'll go to the second and third, and with the assumption that they're not going to want to sell you because they'll see that you have a bad slug or something. So basically it's based on a Gemara in Shabbos. All other types of deception are prohibited, except for this one case. Manda avid milsa v'lo efshele lishkol zuza Michav v'lezel l'shev chanusa adetam shir rivi asa. Person can go to multiple marketplaces and taste what he needs until he feels better. Opirish Rashi v'lo efshar lichnos yain lishkol zuza michazuz ra upachos shena yotze b'hotza v'lezel l'shev chanusa v'derech halokchim l'tomot chila sheyeh tov v'yitom. So ucheshiyitin lo azuz v'chen v'niyim sena rav lo yikablen v'yilech l'chanusa cheres v'yasekein. In other words, tell him you want to buy, show him the zuz that you have. He'll see that it's not a good coin, it's a bad coin. He says, no, I don't want to accept that coin. Please leave my store. And then you can go to the next store. So, but then he writes in the Ha'aros, he says, I noticed that the poskim do not bring this la'alacha, but the Aruch HaShulchan does bring this. And therefore he feels that based on the Aruch HaShulchan, you're allowed to rely on this. And I think maybe we'll look at the Aruch HaShulchan tomorrow. We'll hold it here for today.
Doesn't sound too,
Doesn't sound too
sound
kosher. Doesn't sound too kosher.